A designer new to gCADPlus has asked for some help on how to produce a design such as this. This is a design for a garden bed area featuring some native species. The first thing to note is the tab here says A2 landscape. That suggests that this design is ready to be printed on an A2 sheet. But also notice there's another tab here called model. And if we swing to model, notice the background changes to white. So white background means the layout space or the presentation space or how it will look when we print it. And this space is the real version of a full-size model of this garden bed with a curving edge. I mentioned that in this model space environment, everything is drawn full size. And notice here, there's a dimension being applied, giving us the width of this new garden bed area. I could use the distance command to measure that accurately, although the dimension, of course, has done that for us. And I could come across here and snap to the end of that, what will in fact be a dry stone wall, and I can come across here again and snap to the other end and notice that it's 18990. If we shift the decimal place by 1,000, because we're drawing in units and the units in the metric environment is millimeters, so this is 18990 millimeters. Shift the decimal place by 3 to the left, and that means it's 18.99 meters. So that's the width. It's quite a large garden bed, and it's relatively shallow because there are arcs drawn to form that garden bed. Our designer is a little unclear about how to modify lengths and draw lengths accurately. So let's swing and see if we can recreate things. We'll start a new drawing here and pick the default, and we're thrown into this environment, which is really quite strange. We don't have any idea of size, but if we click the distance command and just click arbitrarily from one side to the other, it's 19, and this time you don't have to shift the decimal place. It's already giving us 83.23. So if I just click it, that distance stays down in what's called the command area. And the next step is, how do we draw that 18990 line accurately? And that's done in a number of ways. I can pick draw, and we have a couple of commands that could be used, but I'll take the simplest, which is the line command. So I click it. I just, for the moment, will click anywhere in the screen and we'll move across in the direction we want to go. Notice that as I swing the cursor, it locks into position. That's because we've clicked in the status line and polar tracking is on. So the easiest way to get that line in accurately is just to move your cursor, in this case, to the right, keeping it, making sure it's horizontal by that click, controlled by the polar command or the polar option. So 18990, and just hit enter, and right click and pick exit. That gets you out of the line command. If we now zoom out, and that's best done by right clicking and zoom extents, and I'll use the wheel of the mouse to come back a little. Now, just always double check your work as you go. I pick that line we just drew, and notice over here in the command area, it's 18990, so it's 18.99 meters. So we're very, very confident we've started off with a very accurate model. We don't have a layout tab or space. All we have at the moment is one entity. If we select it by clicking on it, up here in the properties box, it tells us that that is a line entity. Well, you may remember, returning to the design, we have a dry stone wall and we want to know the width of it. And if we look at, let's draw that rectangle that forms the base of the dry stone wall against a fence. So let's return to our drawing, which has very little in it at the moment. So we've drawn that line. We're confident about its accuracy. Let's start another command. If I right click on my mouse, I can repeat the line command, and I had that line selected. So once it's selected, a little blue grip appears. So I don't have to worry about using these OSnap tools. I just click on the end of it, and we've got ortho on, so I can just move up here, 400. I type 400, hit enter, and the line goes in. If we now hit escape key, that gets rid of the little handles, but I'm going to pick again following the technique. I've just drawn a line, check it and check its length, even check its angle. It's precisely at 90 degrees. So the way I'm working here is very slow and tedious, but I'm very confident of the final result. Now we can speed up just a little. I could use the modify and offset command. I could pick this line here, and I'm asked to specify a through point. I can then right click and click on distance and type 400 and hit enter. The prompt says specify the point on the side. Well, we want to offset in that direction, and that's then done. We want to select an object to offset. I can pick that one and right click. I now want to change that distance to 1990, and it's stuck at 400. So I click through point again and then click distance again, and I get the chance to change that to 18990, and again respond to the prompt. So gCADPlus is helping you work. Right click to finish and exit. So there we have the base of the dry stone wall. Well, to form the dry stone wall, we need an arc coming from the end here and around. So let's return to our developing design. I'm picking window here and just switching from one drawing to another. I need to draw an arc. Draw arc. You have lots of options, but the simplest and quickest one here would be to use a 3-point option. So I could jump using the snap tools here, and we're asked now for a middle point. So we don't have a middle point there, and if I just do it by eye, it's going to become a little ugly. So what I will do is draw a little, effectively a construction line from, I'll use another snap or OSnap and pick up the middle of that line with ortho on. I can go approximately out for the distance of the arc to form the garden bed. So it's draw, arc, 3 points. So we'll snap to this end here. We'll then snap to what is now accurate middle point and see how the arc bends out with us. And we can click there, and the arc's now done. At this stage we can eliminate that little construction line. We do have a construction line entity, but that's not necessary. We can put a line in and then erase it. So it's now a different entity. It tells us here that it is an arc and gives a lot of information about the arc. Now our designer would be working possibly from a hand sketch and had worked out that distance, but we did it arbitrarily. So now the dry stone wall is going to be 400 millimeters. So what we can now do is use that offset. So modify and offset. I can pick the arc, right click, through point, right click again, type our 400 and OK it, and then just indicate the size there. So now we just need to do some cleanup. And notice how this arc we just offset cuts through here. So we could use the trim command, modify and trim. I could pick that as the cutting edge. Think of that as a guillotine which is going to come down and slice through here. Notice it goes all the way around there. And we want to then right click. We're getting a little clue here, right click for the next step. So I'll right click, and that's going to be the cutting edge. So I can pick that one off and pick that one off, and we're done. Now I can repeat the command by right clicking, pick trim. This time the horizontal line then becomes the cutting edge, and I can pick off that one and this one. And we've already formed an area for the dry stone wall, I think, which looks quite neat. Our budding designer is most concerned in gCADPlus about how to enter coordinates accurately and so on. If I just zoom out here, I could have started that original line by clicking draw line. The prompt is asked for the first point. I could have typed coordinate 0, 0 because gCADPlus coordinate pair of coordinate systems. So I could then have typed 18990 in the X direction and comma 0 in the Y. So I've just made a mistake, in fact. Whoops, it's continuing on. What have I added? I probably didn't know. I've got it going. I've added an extra 9 in there, haven't I? So that's incorrect. Let me change its color to help you understand my mistakes. I'll make it magenta. So here's the line I just made a mistake. I was typing in pairs of coordinates, and its length came to be 189900. We need to remove one of those zeros, and I just hit enter. See how the line now fits where it should be. The point that I'm making is you don't have to spend a lot of time typing in pairs of coordinates, and we made the dry stone wall fairly easily with only a couple of coordinates, just typing numbers in. So I hope that allays some of the fears about accurately typing things in. Our designer tells us that she has a site 40 meters wide, and presumably the garden bed is to sit against one of the boundaries. So how do we put in, and she mentions using the scale command to scale that up, and I think that is confusing to use the term scale. What I can do is use the line command again, and I could pop it at coordinate 0, 0, or let's just use our OSnap tools. We've started the line command. The prompt says first point. We don't have to be we have to be accurate, but we can modify things afterwards. Just use the easiest system we know. Before I do this, I'll change my drawing color again to help, magenta. So right click, repeat line, jump to the end of that one. I've still got polar on, so just point in the direction that we want to go. We want to be horizontal, and type 40,000, 40 meters. We are told that's the boundary, that's the site, and right click to exit. Now, I'd be inclined to move now that line from its midpoint to the midpoint of there. So now the garden bed sits in the correct position, and we check ourselves again by clicking here, and it's 40 meters long. So there's no need to scale things. You just use the properties box to change the properties of the entity that you throw in. In this case, we might want to give that line some properties. I'll change back from drawing the color magenta, and we'll set a line type. We have a couple of fence line options, and I'll set that, and we're done. So when I select that line now, it's got special properties of a fence line, but we don't see them yet. We have to adjust the line type scale, and I'll guess around about 25. And I'll change that scale. Still doesn't show. This is just an arbitrary setting. You just change it until things look right. And maybe I'm going too high. Let's try 0.1. And that's not showing either. 0.01. I'm still going in the wrong direction. So let's try 500. And now we're heading in the right direction. We finally see, and we'll make it 1,000. Whoops. Again, I miscued. Now it's 1,000, and the fence line now shows. If I go back to the other design, and we have a different pattern, a line type pattern, and we did have a scale of 25, so that threw me. But what it does give you is a view of some different line type patterns. So I think our budding designer can now, I hope, follow those instructions to fairly easily get to this stage.